In 1997, 39 people quietly vanished from the world they once called real. Same clothes, same message, same radical belief that life as we know it, our cities, routines, even our thoughts, wasn't the truth. It was a staged illusion, a dream designed to keep them from waking up. They belonged to a group called Heaven's Gate, often dismissed as extreme or insane. But what if, buried beneath the madness, they glimpsed a question worth asking? Now, this isn't about defending their choices, not even close. But let's not ignore the uncomfortable overlap. The idea that this world might not be what it seems isn't just cult thinking. It's echoed in ancient scriptures, mirrored in Eastern philosophy, and even explored in neuroscience. And if you've ever felt a strange flicker, like the world around you was a little too scripted, too perfect, too off, then you've already touched the edge of that same mystery. This video is a deep dive into that edge, into how your brain manufactures perception before you even open your eyes, how your memories rewrite themselves, how your identity might be less you and more of a role the mind keeps performing. Most of all, we'll explore the awareness that's been silently observing it all, the one thing that doesn't shift when everything else does. If something inside you has ever whispered, "This isn't the full picture," you're not alone. And once the illusion begins to crack, you don't look away. You look closer. 1. The eye doesn't see, it predicts. People assume their eyes show them reality. But the truth? The eye doesn't see, it guesses. The brain fills in gaps based on past experiences, expectations, and emotional patterns. What you see is often just an echo of what you've seen before. That's why some people always notice danger, while others only spot opportunity. It's not the world that changes, it's the filter. Your perception is shaped long before you ever open your eyes. Imagine walking into a crowded room. One person feels anxious, another feels curious, same room, same faces. But their minds project completely different stories. That projection is built from stored emotion, belief systems, and habits. If the brain expects tension, it will find it, even when it's not there. It's wild to think that two people can literally see two different realities just because of how their minds are wired. That's the subtle force of illusion at work. Here's something to try. Next time you feel triggered, pause and ask, what am I expecting to see right now? You might be shocked. That small awareness already shifts the way you look at the moment. Whether it's a tense meeting or a quiet evening at home, you're not just experiencing life, you're projecting it. You're walking through your own story, mistaking it for the truth. But what happens when that story starts to crack? That crack shows up as discomfort, a strange déjà vu. That feeling like something's just off, even though everything looks fine. That's your deeper awareness knocking. It's the part of you that senses there's more than what meets the eye. And it's not just a metaphor, it's literal. Because if your vision is built on memory, emotion, and expectation, then what happens when you stop trusting what you see? 2. You never see the present moment. Here's the weird part. What you're seeing right now already happened. Vision takes time. Light hits your eyes, your brain processes it, and only then do you see the image. By the time you're aware of it, the moment is gone. It's like trying to catch a wave that already crashed. That means you're always just a little behind reality, living in a world that's slightly out of sync. And yet, it feels so immediate, doesn't it? This delay might seem harmless, but think about what it means. If you're reacting to something that's already passed, then your life becomes a chain of responses to ghosts. You're not living in the now. You're interpreting echoes. The illusion is so seamless that most people never notice it. They get angry in traffic, stress at work, worry about things that by the time they see them have already shifted. They're chasing shadows. Let's get practical. Try this. When someone talks to you, pause for half a second before reacting. That space might feel small, but it opens a huge door. You're no longer running on delay, you're choosing from awareness. The present isn't something you observe, it's something you become. The more you stay with that quiet gap, the more real the moment starts to feel. Like life isn't rushing past, but waiting for you to finally arrive. Now here's where it gets stranger. If your vision is always behind, if your reaction is never to what's really here, then how much of your life is lived through imagination? If you can't fully touch the present with your eyes, maybe seeing isn't the most trustworthy guide after all. Maybe there's another way to experience truth, one that doesn't rely on sight, but on something far more silent. 3. Most of what you see is missing. You ever watched a magic trick and wondered how you missed the obvious? That's not because you're careless, it's because your brain edited out the parts it thought didn't matter. It happens every day. What you call seeing is actually selective attention, where your mind filters reality based on what it believes is important. That filtering creates the illusion that you're aware of the whole picture, but in truth, you're only seeing what your brain lets you see. Think about the infamous gorilla experiment. People were so focused on counting basketball passes, they didn't even notice someone in a full gorilla suit walking through the scene. That's not just a quirky study, it's a brutal wake-up call. If your mind can miss that, what else is it cutting out? The hard truth. Most of your life goes unseen, unprocessed, unacknowledged. Not because it isn't there, but because your brain decided it wasn't part of the story. Want to train your awareness? Start small. Sit in a room and pick one thing, like the background hum, the way light reflects on the wall, the rhythm of your breath. Notice how quickly your mind tries to pull you back to the main plot. That tug is the mental filter trying to keep the illusion intact, but the more you resist it, the more of reality begins to show itself. It's not about effort, it's about attention. Subtle, steady, unfiltered attention. And here's a question worth losing sleep over. If your vision hides more than it reveals, and your perception is based on what's familiar, how much of your life is shaped by what you don't see? What if the answers you're searching for, the peace, the clarity, the breakthrough, have been walking right past you this whole time, just outside the frame your mind allowed? What else is hiding in plain sight? 4. Your mind is editing the movie. Every second, your brain is crafting a visual story. It takes raw data, light, sound, movement, and turns it into a smooth, believable experience. But it's not showing you what's real. It's showing you what fits the script. Your perception is less like a camera and more like a film editor. Cutting, rearranging, color grading your reality to match your beliefs, your fears, your memories. The movie feels seamless, but it's fiction dressed as truth. Ever been in an argument where both sides swear they're right? That's because they're not seeing the same version of reality. Each person's brain is playing back a different edit of the same scene. One where they're the hero, the other where they're the victim. That's not lying, it's how the mind works. It edits reality to match the internal story. And when those edits go unchallenged, the illusion becomes your entire life. Here's something powerful. Catch your mind mid-edit. Let's say you walk into a room and instantly judge someone. Pause. Ask yourself, what story am I projecting onto them? You'll start to see the invisible layers, your assumptions, your past experiences, your emotional residue, all mixing into the scene. That moment of awareness, that's the beginning of clarity. You're not just watching the movie anymore, you're starting to recognize the editor. And if your reality is edited, if your brain is constantly rewriting the script without telling you, then what part of your life is actually yours? What decisions, what memories, what emotions were created by the real you? And what was just added to make the movie feel comfortable? Maybe it's time to step out of the theater and see what's behind the screen. 5. You are seeing your past, not the present. Here's a truth most people never hear. When you look at the world, you're not seeing what's there. You're seeing what you've seen before. Your brain is constantly recycling past experiences to make sense of the present. It doesn't show you reality. It shows you a version that matches your memory. So when you meet someone new, hear a tone of voice, or walk into a space, you're not responding to this moment. You're responding to echoes of the past. That's why someone can walk into a quiet room and feel tension, even if no one said a word, or why you might assume someone's judging you just because they resemble an old boss or ex. Your perception is running a silent program. It's scanning for patterns, familiarity, danger, even when nothing's wrong. That's the mind's way of saving energy, but it also means you rarely meet the present as it is. You meet it as your past expects it to be. Try this. Next time you feel triggered, stop and ask yourself, where have I felt this before? Often it'll link back to a memory, sometimes decades old. That reflection builds awareness. You begin to notice that most of your reactions aren't fresh, they're rehearsals. Your mind is playing reruns, and you're mistaking them for live footage. Recognizing that is a kind of superpower, because if you're watching the past, then the present is still wide open. But if the eyes are just projectors of memory, and every judgment is built on old emotional files, what happens when you finally see the raw, unfiltered now? What does the world look like without the story laid over it? Maybe the real present moment isn't something to find, but something waiting to be remembered. 6. The world you see is built on language. Ever notice how you can only describe what you have words for? That's no coincidence. Your mind actually needs language to recognize what it sees. If you've never learned the word anxiety, you might just call it stress. If you don't have the concept of intuition, you might ignore those subtle signals completely. Language doesn't just describe perception, it limits it. What you can name, you can notice. What you can't, it slips through the cracks. Take ancient tribes who had no word for blue. They literally couldn't see the color, even when it was right in front of them. Not because they were blind, but because the brain filters out what it doesn't understand. So ask yourself, what parts of your experience are being filtered out right now just because you've never had the words to see them? That's not philosophy. It's your daily illusion, hiding in plain sight. Here's a practice. Learn one new word a week, something emotional, spiritual, or sensory, like liminality, the feeling of being between two worlds, or sonder, the sudden awareness that others have lives as deep as yours. These words expand your vision. They upgrade your mental operating system. And once the brain has new vocabulary, it can notice new realities, like tuning a radio to a frequency you never knew existed. But if your entire experience of life is built on the structure of words, and words are borrowed from family, school, society, then whose story are you really living? What if the reality you're trying to improve is built on a foundation that was never truly yours to begin with? What happens when you strip away the labels and see what remains? 7. You're watching a character, not a self. There's a moment that hits hard for most people, the day they realize they've been playing a role their whole life, not out of deception, but out of habit. You were handed a name, a culture, a list of likes and dislikes, and over time, that became your identity. But here's the twist. You didn't choose most of it. It was uploaded like software. And now, when you look in the mirror, you're not seeing you. You're seeing the character you've rehearsed for decades. This isn't just about psychology. It's about perception. Your mind doesn't just build reality. It builds a self to fit inside it. A self that wants approval. A self that fears rejection. A self that says, "This is just how I am." But if you had grown up in a different place, with different parents, different media, different pain, you'd be a totally different person. That should shake something loose. Because if the self can change that easily, how real is it? Want to test it? Think of something you always say about yourself. Maybe, "I'm bad at confrontation." Now ask, is that true or just repeated? Try acting out of character, just once. Speak up, even if it's uncomfortable. You'll feel something strange, freedom. That freedom isn't just action, it's awareness piercing the costume. The mask starts to slip, and behind it, something wordless starts to breathe. And here's where the crack deepens. If the version of you that you've protected for so long is just a bundle of preferences and stories, then who's been watching the whole time? Who's the one that noticed the pattern, that saw through the illusion, that knew deep down you were more than the role? Maybe the real you was never in the character at all. Maybe it's the screen the whole movie plays on. 8. Awakening is seeing without the mind. Most people think awakening is about getting smarter, knowing more, unlocking some spiritual cheat code. But true awakening isn't about adding anything. It's about removing everything that isn't real. It's the moment you stop trying to solve the puzzle of life with the same mind that created it. You stop being the thinker and become the awareness, watching the thoughts flow in and out like clouds. Nothing fancy, just presence. Let's make it practical. Imagine you're stuck in traffic. The mind starts running, complaining, planning, replaying old arguments. But then something shifts. You stop following the thoughts and just notice them. There's frustration. There's impatience. No judgment, just noticing. That's it. That's awakening. Not fireworks, just a shift in perception, from being inside the storm to watching it pass. You didn't fix anything, but somehow the grip loosened. That looseness spreads. Suddenly the things that felt like mountains become pebbles. You see the way you used to cling to control, defend your opinions, protect your image, and it all starts to feel kind of silly. Not wrong, just unnecessary. You begin to enjoy the silence between thoughts, the peace behind emotion, the space that was always there, waiting. And in that space, life doesn't get easier, but it feels lighter, less personal. But here's the haunting beauty. If you're not the thoughts, not the emotions, not the character, then what are you? What's left when the mind goes quiet and you stop trying to fix reality? What happens when you stop staring at the surface and start seeing through it?